Hina, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you for having me.
I'm hearing more and more that people have a therapist, they're going to a therapist, and I'm feeling left out. Like, should I have a therapist myself?
Sophia, I think everybody needs to have a therapist.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the way that we are dealing with the world nowadays and the kind of challenges that people are facing. Therapy should be a natural part of everyone's life. And I think it's time that we start breaking down those stigmas that a healthy person is going to therapy and we kind of give them that sideways glance like, why are you in therapy? I think it's time to overcome that and really take ownership that it's okay for people to want to seek help. And if not, just seek help, but just to go in for alignment.
Mm-hmm. So people who go to therapy it's not like there's something wrong with them or they need a lot of extra help. Like, you know what I mean? That's often the perception that something's wrong with them.
So think of it like this. Prevention is always better than cure.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel that, if you don't have a therapist and you're like, oh, there's nothing really wrong in my life. Yeah, you're right. You don't really need to be in therapy. But if you have a therapist, then anytime something comes up, sometimes people just go in to talk out their month. You're not going there every week. You're going there once a month. You go in once every couple of months. You say, give your therapist your updates. It's a place that you go to meet yourself. And in the hustle and bustle of our lives, our relationships, our careers, the world around us, the kinds of challenges that we're facing, we don't take time to sit with ourselves and to analyze what we're going through, our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences, our responses to situations. And a lot of people, they just kind of put these blinders on and they're running in life and all of a sudden they trip and fall and then they don't know how to get back up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're in therapy, you know that you're going to trip and fall because that is the nature of life. But now you also know how to get back up again.
Mm-hmm. So what does a therapist do? Like, in popular culture, if you watch a movie, you see, you come and sit in a chair, you talk and talk and talk. The therapist just stares at you. And then at the end of the hour or an hour and a half, you just look really confused and then you walk out the door, right? Is that what happens?
Hopefully you're not walking out confused. Hopefully
Okay.
You're walking out with a little bit more clarity. So the act of therapy that you're going for, there's two types. One of the types of therapy is when you have behavioral issues. So you might be, it's kind of like an inward process that I need to work on myself, on my thoughts, my feelings, my actions and behaviors. And then the other type is that you're going in for relationship management. So it could be work related, your children, your friends, or your husband or wife. So the dynamics of therapy depends on what your needs are.
Mm-hmm.
When you come in, one of the most important questions that your therapist is going to ask you is, what are your goals? Coming into therapy, what are you hoping to achieve?
Mm-hmm.
Every time I have a client come in and say, I'm not sure. I don't know what my goals are. I'm like, okay, well, that's where we start then.
Mm-hmm.
We have to figure out and navigate what you're here for and what you actually need help with. If you know what you need help with, that's going to help your therapist figuring out or helping you navigate a lot better because now you know what you want and your therapist knows how to help you get there.
Mm-hmm. So, Hina, how do you choose a good therapist? Because I mean, imagine that therapists have different styles, right? Maybe some talk more, maybe some sit more and listen, right? How do you choose one that's good for you? And then there's also the cultural element, right? If you're a Muslim, perhaps you don't want to go to someone who might not understand your cultural context, some of the things that you care about, your values that you care about the most.
It's $1 million question. How do I find the right therapist? My recommendation always is start by going online and typing in, whatever your requirements are. If you're struggling with something in particular, kind of goal oriented, so you know what you need help for. If you're looking in particular for a Muslim therapist, so just kind of, or marriage or whatnot, right? So put that as the keywords. And there's a lot of great search engines that a lot of licensed professionals are registered with. Psychology Today is a great one.
Okay.
It has a comprehensive database. And then what happens is that it'll give you that original profile. So the therapist registered on most search engines will give you basic information about themselves, their credentials, and then their website perhaps, and you can look into that. So your first soft search is just experiencing different therapists online and looking at their profiles and what kind of population they work with and what their methodology is. The second step, you've got a huge pool to choose from. Pick about 5. From those 5 therapists, give them a phone call, set up a time to speak to them, email them and whatnot, set up a time for a phone call or a consultation and have a conversation with them and ask them questions like you just asked me right now. I want to know what your style is. What are the ways, what kind of practice do you have? What do you like? How do you help clients? And then, be candid and say, are you the kind of person who likes to listen more? Or how do you help your clients? What is your methodology?
Mm-hmm.
From those 5, narrow it down to maybe 3 or 2 and set up an appointment. What I don't recommend for clients who are shopping around for therapists to find the right fit for themselves, what I don't recommend is to go into that first session and pour your heart out. Okay, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
In your first session, a lot of therapists might even give you a consultation time. Like they might give you a 15-minute face-to-face that, you can come in and get to see them, get to see their office and their approach, just to feel that chemistry. How does it feel to have this conversation? But go in there with the intent that you're kind of interviewing to see if this is a good fit.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I say don't pour your heart out or, start sharing everything is because that's going to emotionally exhaust you. And at the end of that one session, you're going to be so emotionally depleted that you're going to be like, I don't want to do this again. So when you go in, just to kind of it's like an interview thing, or you're just getting to know them or consulting with them, what I would recommend is just to have a brief background about yourself. I'm a mom, or I'm a working woman, or I'm a professional. Just a brief bio about yourself, and then feel for the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel comfortable, go with that gut feeling of yours. If you feel comfortable, if you're enjoying your time there, then Bismillah, schedule a session in. But go with your instinct, because you should never dread coming into therapy. You should never be like, oh no, I have to go again. That should never be the feel. So if you can kind of, the process of looking for somebody, if you can narrow it down to a good fit, that's where the real work begins. And, when you're invested in your therapeutic process, it means that you're happy with the person that's providing therapy.
Mm-hmm. Would you advise, if you're not comfortable with the therapist midway, let's say you do 3 sessions with the therapist, would you advise switching to another therapist?
I'm so glad you asked that question. If you're uncomfortable with the therapist, it's okay to make the change. Whenever you realize that this isn't the right person, but usually you're going to notice that when you're involved in the therapeutic process, you're there for yourself. You're there to meet yourself. A lot of clients get uncomfortable around session 3 and 4 because they're being challenged with their own belief system or their patterns or their behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, I want to quit therapy because my therapist is making me make changes. Your therapist is making you make changes because you asked for those changes to be made. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay to feel challenged. It's okay to be put a little bit out of your comfort zone, but communicate that with your therapist and share that with them if you're feeling it towards yourself. If you're not happy with your therapist, maybe they said something that you found upsetting or offensive, or, you kind of, that chemistry that the honeymoon phase is over. And now you're like, oh no, I'm not really happy with this person. Bring it up. This is your therapist's job.
Mm-hmm.
They're okay with you asking questions, and they should be comfortable answering questions or addressing issues and concerns that you may have. So what I would say is, don't keep it to yourself. If in your therapeutic process, whether it's within or it's external, like if it's with the therapist, it's a good thing to address that issue.
Mm-hmm. And why does it seem like therapists, some of the prices are very expensive and some of them are not as expensive? Why does it seem like there's that huge price gap?
So therapy, just like any other, anything else that you're going to look at in the world, there's a lot of background that you may not be seeing, the rent or the office cost that your therapist is paying, licensing fees. I'm registered with multiple agencies or, colleges that I'm licensed with. So I have to pay a registration fee. Ongoing education. So we have to be credited to continuous ongoing credits and learning. So your therapist is paying for making sure that they are keeping up with the requirements of their college or keeping up with the requirements of their license. Simple costs like admin fees. And then always remember that for every hour of therapy that you are attending face-to-face, your therapist is working for 2 hours. The work that we do prior to you coming into session, I review all my notes. I come up with the treatment plan. I come up with, the direction that I'm going to help my client with. I'm going to do some research if I need to. So the hours prior or the time prior to the therapy session. And then after my client has left, I have to do my notes, my filing, anything that was related to admin work, whether it's processing fees or generating receipts. So it's not just that 1 hour that you're paying for, you're actually paying for 2 hours of your therapist's time. And then obviously all the overhead. So if you're going to see a therapist in downtown Toronto versus, a smaller area, obviously that's going to come into play because your therapist is paying for all the overheads.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Hina, for that. I really like you, and maybe I'll have you consider being my therapist.
One thing, Sophia, I do want to add, though, for just everybody is I want you to view therapy, everyone out there to view therapy as a process that when I said initially prevention is better than cure,
Mm-hmm.
the best analogy that I can give you is like going to a dentist. And I really want to slip this in there because I want the audience to really let this sit with them. If you go in for regular dental checkups, you're going to go in for a cleaning and you're going to be in and out for a short period of time. If you don't go, it's going to develop into plaque, cavity, root canal, tooth extraction.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There is a process of pain that we have to go through before things become really bad.
Mm-hmm.
If you go into therapy regularly, it's kind of like maintenance work. You go in, you talk about your stuff, you have the resilience and the resistance skills to get through the challenges in life. The longer you wait to get help, the harder it's going to be to get back on your feet. So early intervention is always the best kind of intervention. Seek help sooner than later so that you don't have to stumble and fall. And then, you find yourself in a position that you're having a hard time getting up.
Mm-hmm. Does the therapist have to have it together to be able to help another person?
Oh, no. Do you think I have it together? I don't.
Because, if you have problems and you're going to someone who has their own problems, how can they help you?
So one of the things that they teach us as part of our academics is the safe and effective use of self. It's called the SEUS model. Mm-hmm. We are consistently required to check in with ourselves to make sure that there's no conflict of interest with our clients. Am I in a safe position to be helping somebody? So your therapist has already been educated about this, that they know their limitations, they know their boundaries. As a therapist myself, I practice a lot of self-care, a lot. So I know when to step back if I am having a very challenging time. So I because I've been in the profession long enough, I premeditate it. So I don't get into an argument before I go into sessions. I don't escalate conflicts or anything before session. So I have my day planned out and I know how to bring my best self into the room. But every therapist has been, part of their academic training has, as I can say, I remember being in school for this from the first day of the program until the last day of the program, they repeated this over and over and over again, the safe and effective use of yourself. Mm-hmm. And we have that sense of awareness that if I'm not in a good headspace, then I'm not safe to be with a client and I know where to draw my boundaries. So subhanAllah, nobody is above problems. Your therapist probably has a therapist. I do. I see a therapist, but your therapist knows where those boundaries are and how to be there effectively for you in the room. And that's part of their training.
Thank you for sharing all of this with us, Hina. I really appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this video, click like and subscribe. And please donate to support our work at QuranSpeaks.com.